Hello, and thank you for joining us for this World Council of Credit Unions virtual event, Empowering the Next Generation Youth Leadership for Sustainable Credit Unions. Today, we're talking about the future of credit unions and the next generation of leaders. I'm excited to introduce Melissa Robinson from the Credit Union League of Connecticut in the USA, who will share insights on how young professionals are driving innovation, engagement, and long-term sustainability in the movement. If you have any questions as you watch today's presentation, please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen and type them in there. I'll ask Melissa your questions later in the webinar as time permits. And today's virtual event is being recorded and will be available this week on the World Council YouTube channel. Now I will turn things over to Melissa Robinson. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, or whatever time it may be where you are. I thank you so much for being here. My name is Melissa Robinson, and I have been in the credit union movement in various roles for over 25 years. I've held a wide range of positions, including part-time teller, collector, and CEO, as well as volunteer positions, including our league board of directors, our nominating committee, supervisory committee, and credit committee. So now I work for our state league, and I get to interface with hundreds of credit union volunteers and professionals from all over our state and sometimes all over the world. I still remember my very first day working at a credit union. I was 16 years old, wearing my very best shoes and trying not to look terrified as a part-time teller. What I didn't know then was I wasn't starting a job. I was stepping into something so much bigger. I was stepping into a movement, one rooted in purpose, community, and people helping people. My grandmother, who was a credit union pioneer in Connecticut, used to say, "We don't work with money, we work with people." That stuck with me. Throughout my journey from that teller window to now serving as Chief Operating Officer for the Credit Union League of Connecticut, I've been lucky to have mentors who reminded me that leadership is not about just lifting others. It's about doing it together and not climbing alone. Today, I want to talk about the next generation of leaders, how we find them, how we support them, and how they might be the key to our long-term stability. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to explore how engaging young leaders and fostering mentorship can ensure long-term sustainability and success of credit unions globally. So why are we talking about this? As we look to the future of credit unions, we have to point out one fact that jumps out. The average age of our credit union leaders is steadily climbing. In fact, over 60% of credit union leaders today are over age 50. Now, while there's wisdom and experience, let's be honest, some of that experience involves using fax machines and flipping open phones. But here's the exciting part. Young leaders bring exactly what we need: fresh energy, tech-savvy solutions, and perspectives shaped by a rapidly changing world. No offense to anyone who still remembers their pager number, but the future isn't coming. It's already here. Organizations with age-diverse teams see higher innovation, and that's not just a theory, it's research-backed. When we empower young professionals, we aren't just planning for the future. We're giving them the power to lead, make changes, and invest in bold ideas and long-term success. Before we start talking about the future anymore, I want to challenge you and pause for a moment to think about some reflections over your career. Leadership starts with self-awareness. So I want you to think back to a piece of advice that a mentor shared with you early in your career, and it stuck with you, good or bad. A lot of the time, an impactful impression isn't easily forgotten. So if it stuck with you, it probably shaped the way you lead today. So I'd like you, anybody who feels comfortable sharing, I'd like you to pop into the chat anything that comes to mind when you think of something that a mentor shared with you early in your career that you carry with you. I give you guys a few minutes to gather your thoughts, and then we'll share a couple out. While we're doing that, I'm going to share one that was shared with me very early on in my career. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. It stuck with me so much because so much about leadership and growth is about mindset. Oh, that's a good one. What other people think about you is none of your business. That is very true. Very true. You can't drive a car forward being distracted too much by the rear and side view mirrors. There's a reason the windshield is the biggest space in the car, right? The windshield is so much bigger than the rear view mirror or side mirrors. That's absolutely correct. Oh, we got a bunch coming in here. Treat customers as you would treat yourself, the best. Oh, did we lose one? I thought I saw another one. Thank you all for sharing. That's really, oh, here we got one. To use high potential direct reports to assist with duties that will build confidence and foster future leadership. Yes, that removing the fear of failure is essential to building great leaders. Do not be afraid to share your views. Yes, that's very impactful, and you never know who might be listening, right? So that is really great. Embarrassment is an underused emotion. Go out there and make a fool of yourself. I love that one. We can keep throwing them in so you guys can share your story, your reflections if you'd like, but we are on a time schedule, so I'm gonna move on to the next next reflection. So if you could go back, what advice would you give your 20-something self? Or maybe not your 20-something self, if you have a little bit earlier memory than that. But early in your professional life, knowing what you know now and the connections you've built and the lessons you've learned, what would you go back and share with yourself? Do not be afraid to fail. Make no excuses, even when excuses are valid. Do not be afraid to take chances on yourself. That's the ultimate bet, right? Double down on investing in yourself. That's a great one, Sheena. Thank you. Be courteous. Clear is kind. That's a very interesting. I haven't heard that one before. I like that. Oh, welcome from Kenya. Face the reality. Oh, thank you. I'm going to give you just a few more minutes for anybody who wants to pop in some advice for their younger self, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Build relationships and trust. Yes, that is essential. One thing I'd like, when you fail when you fail to try. Take all opportunities and future goals. Yes, those are all great insights. Thank you all so much for sharing. This was a great participation. You never know with audience participation what you're going to get. Sometimes you get one answer, sometimes you get 20, and these are all really great. Never give up. Yes, that is true. So as we move on to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about empathy in this upcoming generation. So this upcoming generation of leaders is a little bit different than we've ever seen before. And one thing I'd like to kind of correlate between the reflections that you've shared and their superpower of empathy as we've moved on is that none of your reflections had anything to do with technical skill. It was all reassurance and positivity and kind of those soft skills of emotion. So empathy is the superpower of our next generation of leaders. And it is such a defining trait that they love to lead with and share with others. And it truly does change the landscape of leadership as we know it. And the ability to lead with empathy is not just being nice, Being nice is keeping things pleasant, maybe offering a smile or avoiding conflict. But empathy runs so much deeper. It's about understanding. It's truly listening, stepping into someone else's experience, and making decisions that reflect both logic and human impact. What sets this emerging generation apart is how naturally they bring empathy to the table. They don't have to go to training. This is just the world that they live in. They've grown up in a world where diversity of thought, lived experiences, and emotional awareness are valued, and they expect those values to show up in their workplace too. Empathy allows these young leaders to connect with members on a human level, not just as account holders. It builds trust within your teams, which fosters collaboration and inclusion, being free to share and not afraid to fail, and feeling like they belong to something, and inspiring that belonging to those that surround them. And it drives services and solutions that reflect the real needs of real people. They lead with their heart and they back it up with data and innovation. And in a people-driven movement like credit unions, that's not just refreshing. It's exactly what we need to stay relevant and resilient. So, how do we use that superpower to move things forward? So we need to understand that superpower and embrace it and give them the power to use it and leverage it for our learning potential and for the benefit of our members and staff members on our team. When we talk about engaging young leaders, it's not enough to simply invite them in and let them sit at a table. We have to let them help set the menu, right? So this generation isn't looking for titles. They're looking for ownership. They want to know that their ideas matter, their voice is heard, and their work makes a difference. The fastest way to lose young talent is to micromanage them. The fastest way to build loyalty is to trust them, giving them real decision-making responsibility. Let them take the lead on projects, involve them in strategic conversations, not just to observe, but to actually contribute. When they can see themselves shaping the future of their credit union, their commitment grows and so does their confidence. And that's when the mentorship comes in. Meaningful mentorship isn't about checking a box and just saying, oh, we have a program, right? It's about equipping young leaders with tools, feedback, and encouragement to succeed when they're given that ownership. So let's talk about how we can do that well and within our organizations. First, I want to take a minute to set the stage for some perspective. So when you look at our next image, and some of you may have seen it before, you may feel that you know the truth, right? You always know the truth. So if you're standing on the left, see a number 6. If you're standing on the right, you see a number 9. Well, in this case, both of those things are true. And that is the case in many, many sticking points between teams, right? So when there is a perspective, it's not necessarily an ultimate truth. Usually there's another perspective that we don't know and we haven't been prepared for yet, but we may have a leader in the room that does know and may just be a little hesitant to share. So when we talk about perspective, those perspectives have to be valuable, even if they're not yours, right? So perspective all matters, especially in this instance, on what side of the room you're standing on, right? So when you start to talk about a variety of perspectives, that has to start with creating space for the sharing of those perspectives, and a space that doesn't come with judgment. They have to know that it's an open opportunity to speak freely about what they see and know. We as credit union leaders are always talking about how do we break into this next generation of members? How do we pull them in? How do we get their business? How do we inspire them to make better financial decisions? How do we educate them? How do we learn what the boundaries are and the barriers are between us meeting their needs? Well, a lot of that, you have a peer group right inside your own organizations within your next generation of leaders. So if you want that information, it's probably right there. You just have to empower them to be willing to share. So when they start to share their perspectives, we have to challenge what we think we know. And we also have to take a step back and give them a minute to have the spotlight and share their views and how they see things. It's not a threat to our leadership. It's a gift. It's a gift to our teams and it's a gift to our movement. It takes humility to let someone challenge your perspective. So that's, as leaders, is we have to be humble when those perspectives challenge what we think we know. When young professionals bring their fresh ideas, they bring their lived experience, which generationally is always different. We learned 5 years ago that we live in a very, very different world now than we did then, and than we did 5 years before that. So that's a very short span of time to have massively changing perspectives, but it did happen. So their lived experiences fuel who they are and how they see things. And most of the time, their questions are very bold. And it challenges us to not always do what's always been done and really think about what we could do from here. It's not about right or wrong, it's really just the full picture. The best leaders don't resist being challenged, they welcome it, because fresh ideas and new voices bring a new level of opportunity for all of us. If we're willing to welcome those new viewpoints, we don't just grow as individuals, then we start to evolve as organizations. There are some practical ways to engage the next generation of young leaders. So if we shift from ideas where we give them an opportunity to share their perspective, now we have to shift to the discussion about action, because creating a space for young leaders requires intentional steps. First, consider creating a youth advisory board, and don't make it symbolic. Make it a real platform where young professionals can share their ideas, provide insights, and gain experience engaging with their leadership. It also shows that their voices aren't just welcomed, that they're expected. Second, let them lead a project. And here's the key. When they succeed, don't just pull them to the side and say, hey, you did a really good job. Do that, right, behind closed doors, and have those personal moments. But then in public, oh, brag about it, and brag about it loud. Celebrate their work publicly, whether it's in a full team meeting, it's in your newsletter, it's on your social media. Visible recognition builds confidence and demonstrates that young leadership is valued. Finally, make the pathway to leadership down the line in their career very clear and exciting. If the only visible next step they can see is 20 years down the line when this person retires, then maybe I'll have a shot, right? If that's all they can see, we're going to lose talent. Show them what growth looks like. Create opportunities for learning, mentorship, and meaningful stretch assignments that prepare them for what's next. Because when young professionals can see a future within your organization and feel supported as they grow, they'll stay, they'll thrive, and they'll lead. That being said, you may already have an organization chart that has boxes and a certain path of how things are done. Consider maybe moving those boxes for the right people, right? Instead of fitting the people in the boxes, consider maybe moving some of those boxes to keep your young and bright talent and give them a path of what their next steps and their 3-year plan might look like in your eyes. So when we talk about investing in those young leaders, right? Again, leadership isn't just a title, it's a mindset. And the sooner we help these young leaders adopt that mindset, the stronger our credit unions and our movement will be. But mindset alone isn't enough. Our role as experienced leaders is to create the conditions where emerging leaders can grow, succeed, and yes, sometimes fail, but it has to be safe, right? So what does real support look like? Clear expectations. Don't just hand off a project. Define what the success of that project looks like, not only to you, but to them. What does this look like if it's successful to you? Is a good conversation starter when you're building a mentor-mentee relationship and passing off, the baton to a project. Make sure they know where to go for help. That doesn't mean, micromanaging every step that they do, but giving them a clear pathway that they have a resource, and maybe periodic check-ins of, hey, just checking in to see how you're doing. I'm really excited to see what you come up with, right? And then you want to create access to tools and resources. So this could mean access to a direct mentor, sending them to a professional development program, just exposing them to strategic conversations and kind of how the process works. And making sure that they feel invited to the table, again, not to just sit, but to be a meaningful participant. Visible encouragement that really does go a long, long way with this generation. Celebrate their contributions publicly. Confidence grows when young professionals feel seen and valued. I met a young professional a few weeks ago, and she said one of her mom's favorite things is sharing her accomplishments on Facebook. And what she kind of left out was she has to be posting those too for her mom to be able to share with her friends. So it really, that visible recognition really does mean a lot to them. Um, and then the most important piece, the most critical piece, is providing room to fail without fear. That doesn't mean from a lack of productivity. It doesn't mean, giving them free rein to kind of get to it when they get to it, but it's giving them some creative freedom, and really some room to express their ideas, but then make decisions and steps forward on their own path. Maybe not the way you would do it, but still a meaningful way. If we want innovation, you have to expect missteps, right? Like Apple is one of the biggest companies in the world now, and they employ millions of people, and they are a contributor to the global economy, and they're so successful. But in the 80s, oh, they made some bad choices and it got ugly. But if they didn't kind of have that room to fail and innovate and reintroduce themselves, technology as we know it may be very different. So, you gotta kind of take the good with the bad, as long as the good always outweighs the bad. Don't ever question if they're going to make a mistake, because they will. It's just the nature of learning. We all did. It's really the only way you truly grow. And sometimes when you've been in your job for a long time and you've kind of honed your skills and you're really, really good at it, and your mistakes get fewer and fewer, it's easy to forget the perspective of where we all came from. So we want to make sure that they know that every mistake is a teachable moment, and that is really how you gain success long term. It's really in our response to how they fail when it happens that is going to make them feel like they can continue to learn and grow and try new things, or whether they're kind of going to just shrink away and be more hesitant to share out of either fear of repercussion, or maybe just withdraw altogether. So we really want to be mindful of our responses and use those moments as teachable moments to really strengthen and engage our young leaders. So instead of shame, there's learning. Instead of retreating, they'll lean in, and instead of disengaging, they'll build resilience. And resilience is an incredible skill when it comes to leadership, especially, it seems like every day things are different. And that resilience that you build over time really empowers you to be a strong leader and trust your skills. Every seasoned leader was once a new hire with fresh ideas, rough edges, and we've all learned a few lessons the hard way. If we want thriving, innovative credit unions, we have to create the same space for the next generation with tools, trust, and patience. So one thing that really helps build that skill set and that strength and confidence in the background is a strong mentor-mentee relationship. Building that is a strategic investment in your people and in your organization's future. For the up and coming leader, mentorship provides what's often missing from formal training, right? The real world guidance, perspective, and confidence. It accelerates their development by giving them access to someone who's walked a similar path before. Someone who can help them avoid some pitfalls from the lessons they've learned, can navigate challenges as they come up, and they both grow together as a professional and as a person. This is the most overlooked part of mentorship, is the mentor grows too. It's a growth opportunity for everyone involved, because when we've asked for the feedback from experienced mentors, one thing that they've shared, a couple of things they've shared, is that they are learning to stay connected to evolving needs of younger professionals, things that they may have discounted or kind of just not really been aware of. It sharpens their own leadership and communication skills, and it strengthens their legacy by actively shaping the next generation. They feel empowered, and they feel reconnected to their organizations many, many times. They also often find fresh energy and perspective themselves. So it really is a holistic tool for the betterment of your entire team. When you create a good program, it starts with finding a right match. You can't take necessarily someone and say, oh, you've been here for 20 years and you know this through and through, and here's this new person, and I want you guys to make all this work and life is going to be grand. You really have to think about communication styles, learning styles, and how these two pieces might fit well together. So you want to foster an environment of collaboration, trust, and learning. So you really want to focus on those personality matches too. Let them get to know each other. And a lot of the time, a mentor, once the program kind of develops, a mentor will kind of seek out a mentee and say, "Hey, I think we'd work really good together." So you really want to consider that chemistry when you're making a mentor-mentee match, not necessarily job title. And design your program intentionally. We've recommended use in the past of intake forms. So it goes over communication style and goal setting and kind of the involvement. Do people want to be contacted once a week? Do they want to be contacted once a month? Does this person like texting? Does this person never text? You kind of have to see what is a good fit for the actual relationship itself, so that it is meaningful and it becomes kind of a lasting staple in their career. Oh, I'm seeing some things pop up in the chat. Just want to make sure everybody's good. Okay. So one thing that we do get a question about, we talk about, investing in young leaders and mentorship and, all of these programs is what happens if they leave, right? That's on everybody's mind. I make this big investment in this person, and what happens if they leave, right? So yes, that is the risk you run, right? You mentor them, you support them, and then they leave and they go to another credit union. Well, honestly, it does happen. It does happen. Some will stay and some will grow beyond your organization, but that doesn't mean your investment was wasted. When we develop leaders, we strengthen the entire movement. The mentee might take your lessons, your example, and your influence, and then go lead somewhere else. But their success still reflects back on your leadership, and it still advances the cooperative mission that we all believe in. So now I'm going to flip the question and ask you the other way. What happens if they stay and you don't invest in them? What does that look like? Right? Underdeveloped, disengaged employees are far more costly in the long run than investing in leadership, even if they take their growth somewhere else after a few years. Leadership development isn't just an internal retention strategy. It's a contribution to the sustainability and resilience of our global credit union community. So even if that you do invest in them and they do go to another credit union, odds are they're going to make a successful impact at that credit union too. And then they may have teams that they train or people that they work with that would then reciprocate back to you. You put this program out into the world, and if everybody does it, then we all have qualified, competent leadership that can go to any credit union and be an asset and help spread our message and our philosophy and benefit all of the credit union members within the system and those not yet members. So the final thing I want, well, not quite final, but as we start to wrap up today, I want to remind you that leadership isn't a challenge to solve. It's a shared opportunity. It's not just in your credit union, but around the world. The beauty of the credit union movement is that it thrives on collaboration across cultures, borders, and generations. And when we create space for young leaders from diverse backgrounds to share their ideas, their experiences, and their energy, we enrich the entire movement. Because sustainability isn't just about keeping the lights on, right? It's about growth. It's about evolution. It's about making sure the cooperative principles we all believe in continue to thrive, not just survive. And your leadership, your mentorship, your willingness to invest in the next generation, that's your legacy. That spark might ignite, that you ignite in a young professional today, it might just empower them to be the next big thing. Empowerment isn't just good for the next generation. It's the most sustainable investment we can make for all of us. And this goes for boards, this goes for committees, this goes for staff members, this goes for leadership teams. It's if everyone feels an empowered part of the movement, regardless of the steps where they are in the steps in their journey, they're much more likely to be engaged contributors to the world around them. And that is one of the best things we can hope for. So a thought I'd like to leave you with is our future leaders are already here. They're already here. They're within your four walls. And if they're not, they're becoming soon, because, you know, they're out there and they're looking for opportunities. They just need the mic. So they're already a part of your team. They're already a part of your organization. They may be somewhere in your network, in your community. They're just ready to bring ideas and energy, and they have a desire to contribute. But unless we create space for them to lead, to grow, and to be heard, their potential will stay untapped. So here's the good news. By attending this session, you've already shown a clear interest in what and who comes next. You're here because you care about building the next generation of credit union leaders. So my challenge to you is, what will you do next in the next 30 days, in the next 60 days, in your 2026 plan? What will you do to turn your interest into action? It could be something small. It could be as small as a coffee conversation with a young professional and just making sure they know your name and they know where to find your office. It could be opening a door, inviting someone to the table. It could be stepping up as a mentor or strengthening a program that already exists. Whatever it looks like, the most important thing is that you start somewhere. Because when we invest in them, we invest in the long-term success, sustainability, and the heart of the credit union movement. So I'd like to thank you all for joining today. Your collaboration and commitment to education and innovation is what keeps our movement strong. I am happy to take any questions that you may have. You know, building teams and young leaders is something that I'm very passionate about. So I'm happy to share any personal experiences or answer any questions you might have. So we'll keep an eye on the chat and see if anything pops up. So one thing I'm happy to share, if Katie, if I have some time still.
Yeah,
While
go ahead.
okay. So one story that stuck with me very, very early on in my career. I was a very, very young credit union CEO. I started at 21 years old as credit union CEO. And at the time, I was the youngest credit union CEO in the US. And while that was very exciting, it was very humbling and very, very nerve-wracking. And I got a phone call about 3 months into my start of the position, and I was invited by the Caribbean Credit Union Coalition to travel to Antigua and speak at their leadership conference about engaging young leaders, because I was an anomaly at that time. You know, granted, being the youngest credit union CEO does come to pass, because someone, you know, eventually your age creeps up and someone's going to sneak in underneath you. But when I got there, I was not only the youngest person in the room, I was the youngest person in the room by about 40 years. And I was a little intimidated, not really sure where to go or what to do or who to talk to. And I walked in, and there was a gentleman from Jamaica and a gentleman from Barbados, and they were waiting for me when I checked in. And all they did was welcome me and, you know, let me know that they were there. They were excited to meet me. And it really made me feel like I had, you know, I had a place in the world and people that were excited that I was there. And when I did get up and speak, which I was extremely nervous about, they sat right in the front row. So even just that little bit of taking some extra time out of their day, you know, to be there when I checked in, and then to get to the session a little bit early and sit in the front and let me see that they were there to support me, was absolutely strengthening, empowering, reassuring. And it was just intentional on their part. It was intentional to be kind. It was intentional to be supportive. And, you know, it was intentional that I felt seen and valued. And that was before they were catchphrases, right? Like, this was just a very intentional move on their part. and to welcome me to that beautiful part of the world and to meet new people. It was such an opportunity. So credit unions are a very unique place to be that we're all lucky to call home. So please go out of your way to be that person that introduces yourself and holds the door for someone and lets them know that you do know their name. All of those things are very, very important. I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions. We do have a few comments and questions in the chat. Well, let me start at the top. Yes, you will get a copy of the presentation. I'm happy to provide that to Katie, and I'm sure we can get you a copy. Thank you very much. To encourage young professional to engage in volunteerism. They have to find meaning in it. So you may if it's professionally, like within the credit union movement, like on a committee or different things like that, you may want to help them find the stories, help them find the value. One of the most impactful things that we ever did was to learn how to share the why of why credit unions were created and what we do. The principles and philosophies that credit unions were built on and the difference that we make in service really does resonate with a lot of people. So sometimes to inspire them, we have to be a little bit better at telling our story and more willing to share the why, because they're very emotionally charged generation. So a lot of the time, if you can get their belief, you will get their engagement. I have done everything in my power to bring along young leaders in my career. They are few and far between, sadly, but we're growing and we're getting there. And the one thing you want to be mindful of, like I said, don't get caught up in the boxes. If you only have, a few leadership positions within your organization, but you have some really strong leaders, you can still create committees or pathways or, maybe a little tweak to job changes. Doesn't necessarily mean that someone needs to be removed from a box for them to have an opportunity to rise and engage. And that's been the most impactful thing that we've done to engage young leaders. Also, we involve them in the volunteer efforts with our high school students, our secondary school students of financial literacy. They love getting in there and teaching them about being responsible and making good choices on, what cars to purchase. And I think a lot of it comes from a place of experience. So they're always happy to share those things. The most important factor to attract youth leadership within the credit union. I think it's having an open door. It's being excited about what they do every day. They seek fulfillment emotionally. So a lot of it is just finding what makes them tick and then capitalize on that. Have a conversation with them. And if you don't have them yet and you're willing to, kind of open your doors and bring them in, be excited. Be excited about what you do and get them to be excited, because once you can create that reciprocal emotional engagement, you really will be able to kind of get them all in. But you do have to attract them and get them in the door. Some of it does have to do with compensation and benefits and stuff like that, which, are unique to each credit union. But a lot of the determining factor is really, are they excited and do they feel valued? Do they look forward to going to work every day? There are a lot of distractions competing for their attention. There really are. But the amount of time that they spend at work really is percentage wise is pretty high. So what you want to try to do is maybe take a different perspective on distractions and try to see what are your interests, right? And then maybe take those interests and start to say, okay, how can we make that part of your attention here? If you have someone who has a very strong social media presence or interest in social media, how can they take their personal interests and engage that, and engage that within your credit union? How can they take something that is getting their attention somewhere else, and you can capitalize that and really bring that into your organization, and kind of feed their interest and the institution all at the same time?
Melissa, we did have another question from the Q&A. How
Okay.
do you encourage older people to understand that the youth are the future and they should be willing to mentor them?
That can be a challenge because you really, really want willing mentors, right? And so some of that can start with a conversation of, you've been here for a long time, so clearly you're invested in our organization and our membership. What wouldn't you do for them? What do you want your legacy here to be? And a lot of the time they'll open up and they'll start sharing stories about, I remember I helped this mom who needed a stove 3 days before Christmas, and I was able to get her a loan really fast, and she was so happy. Or I was able to help one of my members, first generation college student that needed help with a student loan. And they'll start to tell these stories and their experiences, and really take that reflection question and ask those two reflection questions. What was something someone said to you? And what was something you would say back to yourself, knowing what you know now? And that really gives you a strong foundation to know if someone is open and willing and a good match to be a mentor. Because if they're able to answer those questions, then you say, okay, now do you want to share that with someone else? Would you be willing to take some of what is you've gathered in your cup and pour it into someone else? And human connection is valuable to everyone, regardless of generation. So once you can kind of get the mentors to see the why and not look at them like, oh, those, they don't know anything. Once they can start to see the why and the value in sharing their stories, and they start to feel seen and valued, then they're a little bit more likely to kind of let the walls down and pour into someone else.
Excellent. Well, feel like we've had really great learnings today. If there's not any more questions for Melissa, just a reminder that the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. Oh, looks like we have one more question. Have you seen an increase in youth engagement within your organization and league on a whole? Is there a special initiative that you have adopted to encourage such?
We've within our organization, we have started scholarship programs for professional development for young leaders. So these are scholarships that they can apply for to go to trainings or conferences that is only available to them. We have a staff member of ours that is appointed at conferences, especially the ones we host or have a strong presence at, to be the point person for the young professionals that are in attendance, because a lot of the time they really don't know anybody. They haven't done this 100 times and they don't know where to go. So we try to always make sure whether it's getting together for coffee or just, sending a quick text, hey, checking in, seeing how you're doing. We had our annual conference 3 weeks ago, and I was the point person for our young professional scholarship winner. I made sure to take her out to dinner and then, introduced her to a few other attendees. And the next thing I knew, she was too busy for me and having a great time and making all kinds of new connections. So that's what you hope for. But we do try to be very intentional about outreach, and check-ins, and and kind of bringing them along, like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'd love it if you'd come with me. We'd love to have you. Or, even sending news articles. If we see an article that we think might be interesting to someone, just to let them know that they're being thought of, and also that we take an interest in their interests, sending it over saying, hey, I saw this and I instantly thought of you, thought you might be, you might enjoy reading this. And that's really kind of, what we do is really focus on the relationship side of it, because that's where the engagement starts, and then it kind of organically grows from there.
Thank you, Melissa. We really appreciate you joining us today. A lot of great insights. If you want to participate in great educational sessions just like this one in person, registration will open for the 2026 World Credit Union Conference later this month. World Council will be co-hosting the premier global credit union event with the Customer-Owned Banking Association in Sydney, Australia, from July 19th to the 22nd. Scan the QR code on your screen right now to sign up for more information and to get notified when registration opens. If you don't have your phone handy, head to wcuc.org to learn more. We'd love to see you all there next summer. That's it for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.